I think today's kind of unique. You came in today and we were going to chat, and the government released their new language curriculum last night. Neither of us have really gotten into it, but they're reintroducing the requirement for cursive writing, which I like because I grew up with cursive writing. So did my children, but it's kind of disappeared. What are your thoughts on cursive?
I think it's very important. It gives a good foundation to the kids' writing abilities. It also gets them practicing writing, right? And that's the main thing. Cursive in and of itself is of value as a fine motor skill. Being very particular, following the rules, you have to focus. You really need to be intentional and put a lot of attention into your work with cursive. So it has some benefits with those elements. But just the fact that students are writing more, practicing more writing in general also has a lot of benefits because they're not spending time putting thoughts on paper. They're putting thoughts on a screen. They're putting thoughts using their voice onto a Discord chat or something like that. And that produces often a high verbal ability, but writing, as we've talked about before, lags behind.
Yeah, I like the idea that they're going to practice. My concern is a principal or the teacher is where's the time coming from? Where is the, in the day? Obviously, like here at Brick Labs, we have a good amount of time. We do an 8-hour day, so I can do 10 minutes of cursive practice every day. Right. And it would be significant at the end of the year. But in the public system, the day is very short. And is cursive the right thing to add back in? Are you specifically identifying something to come out? Because I think that the public system has, the teachers are right. There's not enough time in the day for them.
I think gradually what we're seeing, especially with the current administration and the thoughts of the education minister, older styles of learning are definitely coming back into the curriculum. Styles of learning that were only available in the private stream are coming back into the public curriculum. And styles of learning that are prevalent in other parts of the world. Japan, Korea in particular, have different schooling structures than we do and different expectations, quite higher expectations. And their days are, the students' days at school are more, in many instances, they're called cram schools. You're cramming, you're doing, you're sort of doing blasts through learning subjects, which is suitable for many children, and it's not suitable for many other children as well.
Yeah, they're bringing back phonics.
That's great.
Yes, that's 100% agree with that. But again, looking at it from my lens, saying what am I going to cover off next year, and how am I going to? Because one of the topics I wanted to introduce next year was AI.
Right.
From a what is it perspective, not how to use it and get away with it, but becoming familiar with AI and what's out there, because kids hear about it and they just think, oh, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread, but really to understand it and discuss its implications and what the possibilities are. So it's like, okay, if I want to do AI and I got to get in cursive and I got to get it phonics, it's a challenge.
It is a challenge.
And I don't want to drop other things at the same time. Like, we're relatively new and we're still learning on what works and what doesn't work and when you can combine things. Definitely in writing and in language studies, AI is going to be a huge challenge. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think that children will need to learn that AI is very, very powerful, and in a way that it is sort of out of reach from them, at least while they're learning some of these fundamental skills. I think high school students are sort of savvy enough to go out on their own and start using them and playing around with them. And I think that's an appropriate time to start having conversations with them, and I know that they are in schools, very much so, having conversations with them about the dangers of using ChatGPT and things like that. If not the dangers, then strictly prohibiting them. In college level and university level classes, however, it's slightly different. They're encouraging and teaching students how to use them, especially for research. Mm-hmm. It does genuinely help with lots and lots of tedious tasks in research and the writing of reports and things like that. However, you need to have learned these skills first. So, and I think that ties into the question we were talking about before. What changes are they making to the current curriculums in elementary and middle schools and high schools? I think AI is having a big impact on what they're deciding to teach and what they're deciding not to teach. Elementary will, in my prediction, probably be more about fundamentals, right? How do you teach these kids how to speak and write and read well? Noticeably, that's exactly what AI does, right? AI is a speaking, writing, and reading machine. So we need to turn kids into that as well.
Mm-hmm. I liken it back to my day and the calculator that we were never allowed to use in school.
Right. And now you are.
And, well, I mean, I had to think about it here too. So much like you're saying, once they know the fundamental skill, once they can add, subtract, multiply, divide, and I can see that they can do it and they completely understand it, as soon as we get beyond that, then it's like, yeah, you can use a calculator because I know you know the fundamentals, and now you're just using it as a tool. So maybe somehow with AI, we got to come up with what's that stand, what's the fundamentals that they really must grasp, and then it almost comes down to a one-on-one basis, or at some point, if they understand that the challenges of using AI and what it can deliver. As long as the learning is put first, I guess is my point, is the learning is put first, and then the tools are tossed in on top, and then you're learning the tools appropriately.
Exactly. I was at a graduation last night, and many of the speeches mentioned ChatGPT by name. Thank you, ChatGPT, for getting me through the school year, as a joke. But teachers, principals, students, they all mentioned it. So it is part of the culture already. I think that elementary students should, by and large, stay away from the topic and not know too much about it until they do get those fundamentals.
We had a great discussion at one point in the year about what do you think it'll mean to you, and then we're dealing with elementary students, so what do you think it'll mean to you and your future? And it was good to hear their thoughts because they are hearing about it. It's like we can't avoid them knowing about it.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably going to be my approach for next year is discuss it. It is a topic, current affairs actually topic out there. It is a learning topic. It's what's the future of education going to look like topic. And I'd rather hear where they're at because they pick up snippets.
Yeah.
So that we can address it ongoingly, I guess, in school. And give me another year so we get more familiar with what it is.
It's already much further ahead of all of us, don't worry.
Yeah.
it's at the same time, my use of ChatGPT and tools like that have really shown me the value of the fundamentals of learning, reading, writing, speaking, thinking, right? These are digital tools that do just that. And not only that, but they've read a huge body of work to sort of back them up. It's like an undergraduate. And we can learn things from that. We can learn how students read and write. We can learn, we can give them easier access to better models. ChatGPT is a wonderful writer. Is a wonderful producer of models that humans can sort of aim at. But it's learned the skills. We, flesh and blood humans, have not learned those skills. And a lot of students have trouble learning those skills, right? right? We take it for granted that we can push these buttons on a computer, but we need to develop our own algorithms for this. And I think here at Brick Labs, the intention is to give them the algorithms.
Yes.
Right? The real life algorithms to learn those skills.
Yeah, we often talk about putting tools in their toolbox. And to use those tools properly, you have to experience them and make mistakes and go through that learning process of how to use the tool properly.
Yeah.
It also gives them, you put a few tools together, now they can develop a strategy in attacking a written report or a speaking report. So it's a build, it's a slow build for them. But it's good to see.
A good analogy, you go back to calculators. We have calculators that elementary students carry in their backpack. We have calculators, scientific calculators that students carry, high school students carry in their backpack. You can't do sine, cosine, and tangent, right, without learning these fundamental skills of arithmetic first, and learning how to use a regular calculator as well. And then later you can use these technologies to literally, you cannot do trigonometry without your scientific calculator.
Yeah.
Simply because it's that advanced. And I think that writing and reading kind of holds hands with that analogy as well. There are more advanced forms of writing that students will eventually get to, but they need to sit there with their 1 + 1 is 2, 2 + 2 is 4, and do that again and again and again, and their multiplication tables, and memorize all these simple things we take for granted before they can do anything else. Just building a good foundation.
In your opinion, you can wave your magic wand now and say, okay, this is what I think we should be focusing on for the elementary students. What is that? I know our main thing here at Brick Labs is the STEM activities, but with creativity, of course, they have to have that creativity. But it all can't come together without language studies and the ability to express yourself. So what should parents be looking for happening in the classrooms of students today? What should they be, keeping an eye on to make sure that their child is engaged and is learning?
I think parents should be starting to speak up a little bit with their teachers in a gentle manner, especially if they notice that they're coming home with printouts from Google, from websites to teach the material. I've noticed that on a number of occasions with a number of different children, teachers are not using the correct resources to teach their kids. They're teaching the correct topics maybe, but they're going on Google and they're typing in the topic and they're finding a free PDF of what's sort of come up first, and they're just simply giving those worksheets to the students, maybe doing a small lesson. That format of teaching is pretty prevalent and has not done our students any favors.
Okay.
Many teachers do not teach like that, and I will note that the ones that I have encountered have degrees from other countries. They've had teacher training in countries that have better education systems than we have here in Canada. So it's a very mixed bag of what you're going to get in the classroom. We need better teaching materials. We need more consistent teaching training. We need to bring some of the benefits of overseas teaching training to Canadian colleges and universities. So there needs to be a change, I think, on the way that we teach teachers how to teach as well. On the classroom level, I think teachers need to be prepared to sit down with their students more one-on-one, which does mean smaller class sizes. So smaller class sizes is a big deal. Teachers simply cannot do that with 35 students or even 30 students. I have trouble doing it with 6 students sometimes. So you have a huge mix of personalities and learning types. So teachers need to be better equipped for dealing with those differences as well. So there's a lot of changes that need to happen. And they're not easy changes to make either. So.
Yeah, I think I mean, and a lot of the information is out there and what would make the system better. And a lot of research, government papers and recommendations. And I think that was probably the easiest thing that we came across at Brick Labs was how do you make a great school? Well, all the research is out there. Small classes, outdoor time, more more physical activity. Give them the why behind lessons. When it's time to be repetitive, so they memorize something, memorize it. When it's time to be experiential, where we're learning about it hands-on, figuring things out, having a little bit of nimbleness and getting feedback from your students to see what they want to learn. This is all out there, and it's just, I think, as we encounter it, like in the system, it's very hard for them to be nimble. There's so many restrictions in place and dollars and staffing and policies, etc., that just don't allow them to be nimble enough to address student needs.
Yes. I 100% agree.
I've met your children. They're extremely well-read. Surprise, surprise. But you mentioned to me that when they have time, they'll pick up a book. And you have them there, that they can just, there it is. But how do you keep them engaged? I'm not gonna say how do you keep them engaged. How do you keep them not engaged? Like, I want to use the screen. What's your, as a parent,
We're pretty strict about this. So we believe that kids should be allowed to be bored and should be given sort of time to be bored, which means, yes, you're putting up with a lot of complaining. But I'm sorry, but there's nothing to do but read. If you want to read, or if you want something to do, you can either go outside, you can go to the park, or you can pick up a book. Or you can draw, or do any of these sort of, I like to call them analog activities. Anything you're doing with your eyes or your hands that's not on a screen. Drawing, painting, reading, arts and crafts, cooking. And usually if you put up with a little bit of complaining, they will go and do one of those things, begrudgingly, of course. But they're doing it. They've picked up the book and they're sitting there and they're reading. And half of the time, if you just leave them, they will continue doing just that, right? They will find their own things to do. If you just give them a screen, however, there's a universe on that screen for them to explore, and it's fun. They want to tap, they want to go between apps. When my daughter has a screen, she has these maybe 2 shows that she particularly likes and about 5 scenes in each of those shows that she just watches again and again, and it's like an addiction almost, this scrolling back and forth, and you have too much freedom, and it doesn't offer students an ability to learn how to focus.
I mean, when we first opened here, one of my policies was no screens. And even to today, we never watch a movie.
Right.
Like even on the last week of school, can we watch a movie? No, we're not watching a movie.
You're cruel.
If we got an hour and a half to blow, we're going outside. We're gonna go get some exercise.
Exactly.
We're gonna go run around. Yeah, you can build Lego. We have lots of Lego here. Get creative, because they really do get creative with it. And screens are limited to research, typing up a report or something. But as a tool, and I don't think it should be an entertainment type device at that age, especially at the elementary age.
Let's tie this back into your question about cursive writing and why it's important, because I think this is important. A student who is very intelligent and has high verbal skills and is able to produce ideas, but can't write by hand, will be incredibly limited. They'll sit down on a document on the computer and type, and they'll produce an amazing amount of material because it's much easier for them. Often they've spent a lot of time on computers and they're very comfortable using your computer, so that's the way they get their ideas out. That does not translate well into formal writing. That does not translate well into learning material.
What do you mean, like translate?
Well, when if they can get their ideas out on the computer screen, but they can't get their ideas out on paper, those ideas are not as solidly formed in their own head. They can't do as much with them. They're not the master of their material, in other words. If they can learn to get their ideas out on paper, right? They have a much more solid understanding of what they're saying, why they're saying it, and where to go from there, right? If they've thought about it more and they've formulated it into a formal sentence instead of blasting it onto the screen, as fast as their fingers can type. Often people type the way they talk, but what we want to try to do, especially here, is to give them more form, to create.
Yeah, I've seen that a lot with the students where they're in a book report, and and I've gone back to, okay, so this sounds like you're talking and it's not a written report, and it happens often, but it's something we can fix. Mike, this was a great conversation. I really enjoyed hearing your thoughts on everything from Cursive to AI. That's quite the range. But you will be available here at Brick Labs in the fall with some extra curricular language classes that we'll be offering on 3 nights a week at the elementary, middle, and high school. They'll be small classes. We're going to limit them to 6, I think, because we're going to try and keep it down there. If there's a bigger demand, we'll add more classes maybe, or figure something out. But I encourage you to go to our website and take a look and learn more about what we'll be offering this fall. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, John.